Can you help everybody get their earphones on? Well, I think there might be a few people heading over this way. Oh, okay. All right. All right, awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much. Is there somebody right after me? Because I'm really tight. Oh, there is a... Oh, okay, we're good then. We're fine. Hey, Julie. Good, how are you? Good. Enjoying the conference? Isn't it amazing? Fire hose, they say. Really has been. Yeah. Yes, yes. And I just missed them answering that question as I came over here to prep. But that question was in the fireside chat. So when my buddy comes back, I'm going to ask him what was said. If I find you, I'll tell you. You were in there, okay. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. And I know that they want to move features from the cloud back into FileMaker, have FileMaker work with the cloud. It's a lot of cool stuff. Thinking what? Yes. Yeah. Right. And people are looking for change. Yeah. You're all set, Francois? So I'm using this as my remote. That'll be handy. Everything's mirrored, so I should be able to see everything.
Is it your phone?
This is my phone, yeah. I have 2 phones. Always carrying 2 phones.
Oh, yeah.
Company, personal.
Yeah.
8, 6. 6S, I think, yeah. No matter where you go. Philippe? Philippe? Is he ready with the camera? Yeah. He's not listening. You want to get this picture? Oh, absolutely. Pretend I'm already talking. Good? Pretend I'm talking to you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Hey, thank you so much. Now, first of all, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Am I talking too loud? So I kind of had 2 approaches to this one. Maybe I should talk very quietly because you're all like ready to wind it all down. Or talk very fast because I'll get my presentation done faster. So I had coffee today. I'm sorry, we're going with plan B. How many were at my presentation last year? Anybody? Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks for showing up. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. leveraging the edge, FileMaker integration and beyond. My name's James Hay. I'm with Cyberimpact. Of course, oh, that just jumped way ahead. So who am I? Okay, there we go. So I've been doing this for a little while. I'm now FileMaker 18 certified. How many of you have taken the 18 certification? Yeah, okay, good, excellent. And I've also have moved more out of development into project management, business analysis. I have been a speaker and presenter at DevCon 2015, 17, 18, and now 19. And I'm working on my Agile Scrum Master certification. But the best part of this year was that. Just climbed Machu Picchu in May. Was a one-day trek. We won't do it again, but it was an experience to remember. Absolutely awesome. A little bit about Direct Impact Solutions. We've been around, there we are. Founded in 1996, so we've been around for quite a while. We now have 32 employees, 19 certified developers, 5 branch offices, 3 in Canada, 2 in France. We are in fact, let's do it, there we go. We are in fact the largest FBA in Canada. We're also an FBA trainer and an FBA reseller, and we think probably one of the largest resellers in the world. We're also a member of the Apple Consultants Network and a Microsoft partner. Right over here, Philippe Lazzaroni is the founder and president of our company. He has been Evangelist of the Year in 2012, largely because of the work he does in France, speaking at the conferences there, but he's also been a regular speaker here at DevCon since 2015. Okay, so what's our agenda today? So we wanted to, last year we talked about 7 integrations. Today we're only going to talk about 2, hence me talking pretty fast. So first we're going to talk about integrating with Office 365. So we'll take a look at the building blocks, what we needed to do for this demo. Then we're going to share some, well, we'll do the demo, and then we'll share some of the challenges we ran into. And you'll notice a slight modification to my presentation. Will this connect with Claris connector? We'll talk about that. And secondly, integrating with Cyberimpact, which is an email web service in Canada. We actually have a file that'll be going on Marketplace. And so our primary use case is that it meets all the Canadian standards for anti-spam law, things like that. We will do a demo, and we will also answer the question, is there a Claris connector for that? So, how many of you are using Office 365? How many of you have clients using Office 365? Yeah, so it's ubiquitous, right? Office is everywhere. Everybody is accessing either Word, Excel. More and more people are accessing Microsoft on the cloud, so you're getting to SharePoint and other assets as well. How many are using Teams? Anybody? Wow, so it's all happening, right? So in order for Microsoft to handle third parties to access all of their assets, their digital assets and applications, they've come up with something called MS Graph, Microsoft Graph, which they call the Universal API. It is not a single API, it is an API for each of the resources, they call them. So that includes accessing all the Office 365 services, SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook, Calendar, email, contacts, which we'll be focusing on, even Excel, Excel data, and OneNote, Teams, very cool, and change notifications. Change notifications is what makes the magic happen, what you'll see in this demo. Okay, it changed. So our particular focus today will be on Outlook contacts and mail. We wanted to just show you, how you can bring stuff in from FileMaker, including contacts, messages, viewing the actual email messages in FileMaker in native format, so you get to see everything in full fidelity, and also creating a contact in either platform and viewing from either. So some of the requirements to make this happen was we needed to do Azure Active Directory authentication. So that was a requirement of the APIs. We needed 3 APIs to make this work. We needed to use the Outlook Mail API, the Personal Contact API, and change notifications so that we could subscribe, and whenever a change was being made, it would happen on either platform. So let's just go right into the demo. Just going to go over here. Yeah, and just I think you hit here or here. Is it running? Is it running? Go back. Yeah, usually if you put your mouse over, there we go. And it's running. Okay, it's running. Okay, great. So what you see is our file here that integrates with Outlook, and what you see in the background is Outlook itself. We have 7 contacts in Outlook, and you just saw we had a couple of contacts in our file. When we set up the file, we have a settings page. You need to have a link to the API, you need to have an application ID, and you need to have a password. We also have a redirect URI, so once we've connected, you'll see that show up. So we're going to connect using one of our internal accounts. We enter our name there, we enter our password, and then we enter our preference as to whether we want it to remember us. And then once we're signed in, you'll see it's going to go very quickly to the Google page. That was really quick. Okay, so there are a couple of other settings, and these have to do with getting notifications or subscriptions to changes in either the emails or in the contacts. And for that, we have to have a web service running. And so you'll see our web service URL. You'll see us clicking to subscribe to the emails and subscribe to the contacts. So once that's done, there's one more thing that you'll see in a second. And that is, we're only going to look at the last 7 days of emails. We're not going to bring in a gazillion emails in this case. But you can set it up for whatever preference you want. So now let's take a look at our contacts. As you can see here, we only have 2 contacts showing in our system. And the far right, you can see the status. And the status is they're out of sync. They're not actually in the system. So let's bring in the contacts that we have in Outlook into FileMaker. So that's just a simple API call. We're collecting all our contacts. They're coming into FileMaker. So as you can see, they're all there, and it says sync successful. So now we know that the data that was in Outlook is in FileMaker. Now we can start with creating a new contact in FileMaker, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, that right hand, that it's already out of sync. That's because the data has not been transferred over to Outlook yet. So we're adding some information. We definitely want to get an email address in there, some other information for that contact. This is the part which is really relaxing. We sort of wait for the data to get entered. You could pretend I'm typing. And yeah, so once that information is entered in there, we'll add some notes as well. Then we're going to do an event-driven task. This will not be based on the subscription. We're actually going to have to sync to Outlook to push that information over to Outlook. I'll just add a couple of notes. And so we have a function up here on the upper right, sync to Office 365. And once we click that, we see OK. And if you look in the background, you see that that contact has now been added to Outlook. So when you start looking at the data there, you can see that everything was brought over as we entered it in FileMaker. Really important that you have the same fields as defined by the API. So when you're moving stuff from one to the other, it's there. Now you may have noticed that we didn't enter their title. So we're back in FileMaker, we're adding the title. And again, it says we're out of sync. We've made a change, it knows. And so we'll just, again, manually sync that by clicking on sync. So that's great. So that works. That's fine. It's all good. But what if we want to add more information in Outlook? And this is where it starts to get a little magical. So we're missing a zip code. We enter the zip code into Outlook. There's no save button there. We do click outside the field in Outlook. But if we go back to FileMaker, we will not click on anything. We will not touch anything. But you'll see that the zip code will come in automatically. And this is because of the web service that's listening to the subscription that we set up at the beginning. Okay? So it's saying, okay, there was a change made. Let's move the data over. So we can manage those contacts. We can delete them both in FileMaker and in Outlook. And so we just did that. So what about if we wanted to add somebody in Outlook? Will that move the data over to FileMaker? So very interesting. We'll start with creating a new contact in Outlook. And we're just going to show you by looking at our contact list, that person is not there. So no tricks involved, nothing up our sleeve. We're actually going to create the contact in Outlook. Her name is Jacqueline. She's a very famous person. No, we don't know Jacqueline. But we're going to add a bit of information for her here. Again, this is the relaxing part. Because I've had coffee, I'm talking faster than the video. But yes, we're just adding Jacqueline's information to Outlook. And this is also an event-driven operation, because you'll see in the upper left-hand corner of the contact information is a save and close. And when we click on that, that is what's going to move the information back over to FileMaker. So we'll just get everything that we want in there, and the last thing we need is that email address. And then we hit save and close. And that's enough to send the information to the subscription service that we need to update this in FileMaker. And so now that you'll see her name appears magically a few seconds later, because the service is polling, it's not real time, it's responding to the actions. Now, let's say we want to bring in all the emails that we have, and we want to take a look at those. The API is set up so that it will bring in the first level folder. It will not bring in the nested folders. So if you want to bring in nested folders, you do have to change the API call to do that. And that can get quite expensive, but it also, everybody has different names for their second level folders, so you're going to have to make sure you properly configure your API to do that. So now we're going to take a look at Here Marketing. We want to see if they have any emails that we've either sent to them or that they've received from us. And you can see, yes, they've got an email. And you can see we're looking at it through the web viewer, so we see everything in full fidelity, full HTML. So that's cool. Is this file available to them afterwards? Not yet? Can they hear you? Can you hear him?
Not yet, but it will be.
It will be. So this file will be available for you. And now, if we want to look at sent items, we're going to go take a look at something that we sent, but we're going to send it right now. So we're going to go back into Outlook, send an email to Jacqueline, and then we're going to see what happens in FileMaker. And again, I don't know if you noticed, we didn't click on any buttons to see the emails in FileMaker. They just came over automatically based on the subscription. So we're going to send an email to Jacqueline. We'll add a little bit of a rich text. We'll add an emoji here in the subject line. And almost done. And then we'll send it. So once we send it, we're just going to verify in Outlook that it did actually go. So we'll check that. And it is, and it's sent. And you can see, it's a regular email that was sent. But now if we go over to FileMaker and take a look under her, under sent items, you'll see in a couple of seconds, it'll appear automatically. Again, we didn't click on anything, we didn't, do an event. It happened automatically. And there it is in full fidelity. So that is integration with Office 365 email and contacts. That's pretty much for that demo. Now, did we have some challenges? Yes, we did. Some of those were, you have to have a subscription for every resource. Every resource means if you wanted to bring in tasks, if you wanted to bring in events, you have to have a subscription for each of those. Second, we had to have a custom web service. And so for this demo, we actually wrote a custom web service, but on our local machine, so we could just demo the interaction between the applications. But you would have to build your own custom web service, probably hosted on a server. MS Graph documentation, somebody has looked at it. I know you smiled when we talked about the documentation. There's a lot to it, and it's not necessarily that easy to understand. I know we struggled with some of it. The other thing we found was that the Azure IDs were too long for FileMaker relationships. So we actually transformed them using an MD5 hash and use that as a relationship key. Data comes over in JSON OData format. How many of you have heard of OData? Okay, cool. So OData is a Microsoft standard. It's been around for about 6 years. It is on the FileMaker roadmap. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Oops, was that everything? Sorry. Yes, that is everything. Subscription, so let's talk about that. So you have to have a subscription for each of the resources. I mentioned the Outlook ones already, but you can also have a subscription to users, to groups, and to group conversations. You can subscribe to any item in your personal OneDrive or any item in the root folder of OneDrive for Business. You can subscribe to security alerts. And most of the subscriptions will last for just under 3 days. So if you want to have an ongoing subscription, you're going to have to do a server-side schedule that will keep renewing those subscriptions, and you have to do it for every resource. Secondly, the security alerts will subscribe for up to 30 days, so you only have to do that every 28 or 30 days. The custom web service, as I mentioned, was something that you have to have, and so we wrote that in C# in .NET Core. We had webhooks to FileMaker 18 Data API, and that's how that all worked. So we're actually firing off scripts through the Data API to bring everything in as you saw it. Now, future versions can be written in any language, and the reference for that is to Microsoft.com graph webhooks. And I'm sure you've heard about webhooks sometime during this last couple of days. I mentioned JSON OData. So as mentioned, this is actually a screenshot from the FileMaker roadmap. It is a standard that is coming down the road. At one point it was actually in a pre-release product. It is not in any release product, however. It's not currently supported by FileMaker Pro, so what we had to do is just do some brute force removal of that metadata. But then you could use the JSON functions in FileMaker to parse the rest of the data, so that was pretty cool. Will there be a Claris connector to Office 365? The answer is definitely. So that's very cool. What will it do? How much will it will cost? All that kind of thing is still up in the air. When will that happen? Will it be in the first release? I'm not sure, but it's definitely on their roadmap. Okay, we're going to do a quick presentation on something called Cyberimpact. Cyberimpact is a Canadian-based email service. It complies with Canadian anti-spam laws, which are actually a little stricter than American anti-spam laws. Data is stored in Canada, so for anybody who is outside of the US and you're concerned about data residency, that solves that problem. We have better delivery rates, so if you're used to something like MailChimp, you might want to take a look at Cyberimpact because the rates are lower, and guess what? They're in Canadian dollars, which means they're much lower. It is a small business-focused platform, which works really well with FileMaker integration because basically we're work groups and small businesses, right? But it is a fully bilingual platform, both at the front end and the back end. So if you have French clients, obviously they'll see their interactions in French. But if you have French developers, they can work in it in French as well. It has a RESTful API, and so that's obviously why we're demoing it. So we are going to be posting a simple, easy-to-use template on the marketplace. And of course, it has the built-in API to Cyberimpact. It is fully customizable, a completely open file. So let's go to the demo. And if you can just press on that space bar, I think that'll get us going. So FileMaker and Cyberimpact, again, you'll see a very similar file to what we just had. And here is our web page where you can go and get details about Cyberimpact and be able to download the file, right? Is this, we're downloading from here? Yeah. And we'll take a quick peek at the Cyberimpact website. And as you can see here, email marketing made easier, lots and lots of functionality from that web service and that API. So what we'll do here, very similarly to what you saw in the previous demo, we have a contacts and settings page. And in the settings, all you need is your URL or your API URL plus a token. And then once you have that, you can connect to the API. So this one's a lot simpler. It doesn't have notifications, so everything is event-driven. We have to click on a button to make something happen. In this case, we just brought over all the groups that we have on the web service. And so you can see those, and we can add a group here in FileMaker. And then once we've saved that, that will go back to the web service as one of our groups. And as mentioned, This is all driven by events, so clicks will cause the calls go back and forth between the web service. And we can also modify the name of an existing group, so we can update that. And of course, we can have as many people in a group as we want to send email campaigns to them. So there's a successful update. Now, in this case, we'll take a look at a couple of the contacts, and we can modify which groups they belong to. So in this particular case, you see that that particular contact belongs to that group, but we can add that or change that. Now we're going to show you all the contacts that we have in this particular file, and you'll see only 4 or 5 of them actually have been subscribed. All the rest of them are not registered. So if we want to register somebody into the email service, we'll start by creating a new contact. Just show you how that works. So in this case, we're going to again enter some information. You can pretend I'm typing, but I want you to notice what's happening in the middle of the screen at the top. It says Cyberimpact-not registered. So that's giving us the indication that this particular contact is not registered. There are a couple of ways to register someone. One is what we call an express consent, which means they have to tell us that they're okay with being on our list. Another is called an implicit consent, which means we can make them belong to our list. And that might be somebody who is a business relationship. You know, they have to receive invoices or account updates or reminders or things like that. So in this case, we're still entering the information, not registered. We click on subscribe, and then there is a little workflow to this, and you can see an email was sent to that person. They must click, I want to belong to the group, and then fine, their status will change. The web service will update it to fully registered. That's just the explanation I just gave you a moment ago about implicit and explicit permission to do so or to be registered. So what we'll do now is we'll actually create another contact, but this one we'll do the force opt-in. All right, so let's add another contact. And again, you'll notice as well that as soon as we start adding information, well, in this particular case, we see that they're not registered. Sorry, I was jumping a little bit ahead. And so we'll enter the information there. I don't think there's anything further I have to say. We'll talk about getting them into groups in just a few minutes. I should have probably run this at 2 times so we could go faster through the data entry. Okay, so in this case, we don't want to just regularly subscribe them. We're going to do what's called a force opt-in, and they'll be registered automatically. So again, you have that business case where they're a client, you want to be able to invoice them or update them on their account or things like that. So they're now on your list. And notice that the system will tell you, this file, by the way, as I mentioned, will be downloadable and available to you, but it tells you the status of how they were subscribed. So if it was an implied, consent, then you'll see that. Now let's go to the website of the web service, Cyberimpact, and take a look at our accounts, at our contacts. So we log in with our account, and we'll see, here's a list of all our subscribed people, and there is Joe at Big Data. That's the one we just added to the system. And you can see we've got a little bit of information that we added, and we're just checking through that, and we go, oh, there's some information that we missed. So we want to do an update on Joe. We go back to FileMaker. We can make those updates directly there. In this case, we're going to add a language and a country pieces of information. In the middle of the screen, you see there that a sync has not been done. So it knows immediately that it's out of sync. We hit update, and that information is pushed over to the web service. Now we have to refresh this page. Once we do that, you'll see the new data has been added. And there it is. So we have his language preference. We actually have his company information as well, and the country. So Joe isn't in any groups though, so he's not going to get any emails from us if we're sending something out to a group. So let's add him to a group. So we do that over here, and we add him to the big data group. There, the information's been updated in the web service. We go back to the web page, And then if we refresh the web page, you'll see that he's now in a group. And you can see now he's now belongs to one of the groups. Now you can actually add him to as many groups as you want. So he can belong to many different email campaigns. Now in this section, we're just going to talk about how some information is updated between the two systems. So we'll just take a look here. So for instance, we may decide to change which group somebody belongs to. Again, that's pretty easy and straightforward. We just add them to a group or remove them from a group. And that's all done. But what about if we want to unsubscribe somebody? What if somebody either tells us explicitly that they don't want to belong to a group or don't want to receive any more emails? We can also manage that from within FileMaker. So here are all our subscribed people. You'll see down at the bottom, Charlotte is subscribed with us, but now she's given us a phone call and doesn't want to be subscribed anymore. We can manage that directly within FileMaker. We just click unsubscribe, and that's completed. And then if we go back, we go to our unsubscribed list, and you'll see that Charlotte has been unsubscribed. Now this isn't all that you can do with Cyberimpact. There's millions of things that you can do. Of course, you have templates, you have mailings, you can automate your marketing, all that kind of stuff. So that's all there for you. But this is your starting point, and this file will be available to you from us. Now, the question is, will it connect to Claris Connect? Yes, it definitely will, because we will write the connector for that and put it in the Claris Connect marketplace. And that, my friends, is my presentation. If you have any questions, please, we're open to answer any questions you might have. Yeah, so that was what I asked earlier. Yes, we're going to have one ready. Yeah, so how will they access that to get the FM365 one?
Sure. Yeah.
It's also going to be on Marketplace. Yes, the two files will be on FM Marketplace. Good question, Julie. Any other questions? Well, thanks so much for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your presentation, the rest of the conference, excuse me. The session will have updates. We'll have those links to those files once they're on Marketplace. And don't forget to fill in your evaluations. And again, thanks so much for coming out, and enjoy the rest of the conference.